Hi, today my friends Asyiqin, Rosdi, and I, my Fatihah Zulkarnain, will present to you the topic about genres, morality, and social justice. Before we started to the point, let's talk about his biography. He was born in Baltimore in the year 1921 and died in 2002. He was an American political and ethical philosopher, best known for his theory of justice, the concept of justice as fairness. All people are equal and deserve equal rights and opportunities. Justice cannot be derived from utilitarianism, Jeremy Bentham, because that concept emphasizes on the greater happiness of a majority is achieved by neglecting the rights and interests of a minority, and it leads to bias and unfair. Let me give you an example. Okay, there will be two situations, which is situation A and situation B. In situation A, people will get 100 ringgit each, but in situation B, not all people will get 100 ringgit each. Some of them will get 1,000 ringgit. In that situation, we will see that in situation B, not all people will be treated fairly, because some of them will be happy because they get 1,000 ringgit, but only 2 or 3 people get 100 ringgit each. So the solution is, it is better to be in situation A because everyone will be treated fairly. Okay, let me give you another example. Second example is, another example is, imagine that you are in a class that has 10 people and your teacher asks you that whether you want to do a class, but 7 of them say that they don't want to do a class and only 3 of them wanted to do a class. So, based on this situation, of course, the teacher will conclude that there will be no classes on that day because of the majority doesn't want to have class. But rewind back, John Rawls' theory is about justice and equal. So we can't neglect the interest of minority.
And then he develops a conception of justice from the perspective the person are free and equal. So by this, there are two moral power, which are a capacity of a sense of justice and a conception of the good. Okay, so for the first, moral power is a capacity for a sense of justice, which means the capacity to understand, to apply, and to act from the public conception of justice, which characterize the fair terms of cooperation, which means this sense express a feeling to act in relation to others on terms that they also can publicly endorse, meaning that support openly. So for the second one is a conception of the goods, which is this concept is valuable in human life. And also, it consists of a more or less determinate scheme of final ends, that is ends, which end is a goal that we want to realize to their own sake, as well as attachments to other person and loyalties to various groups and associations. We also connect such a conceptions with a view of our relation to the world by reference to which value and significance of our ends and attachment of understood. So I will pass to the next presenter to talk about original position and the veil of ignorance.
Imagine ourselves in an original position behind the veil of ignorance. behind the veil, we know nothing about ourselves and our natural abilities and our position in our society. We know nothing about our gender, race, wealth, or our position in that society. We will become an individual, rational, free, and morally equal beings. Have similar needs, interests, and capacity. Let me give you an example. A person who is a slave and the slave owners. If the slave owners were put behind the veil of ignorance and that to imagine themselves as a slave, of course, the practices of slavery will no longer justifiable. Original position help the individual to force him to consider a situation from the perspective of all members of his society instead of solely from his own perspective. The veil of ignorance can favor cooperation and suppress conflict within groups, and create a society that satisfies the principle of justice and fairness. Rawls is focusing on how to create society who is just and fair. In order to do so, he came up with the two principles of justice. He stated that persons in the original position would likely to choose two fundamental principles. The first one is the principle of equal liberty, and the second one is the different principles. These two principles will be explained by my group members. Asyiqin.
Thank you, Sister Fatihah. So I will continue for the part 2 principle of social justice. So these two principles, which are the principle of equal liberty, and also the second one consists of two, which is the difference principle and also the principle of fair equality of opportunity. So we move on for the first principle, which is the principle of equal liberty. Each person has an equal right to a fully adequate scheme of equal basic liberties which compatible with a similar scheme of liberties for all. For example, freedom of thought, the political liberties and freedom of association, as well as the freedom specified by the liberty and integrity of the person, finally the right and liberty covered by the rule of law. He also added that liberty also applied to the religious, philosophical, and moral view of our relation to the world. For example, political liberties. These liberties would require representative democratic institution, freedom of speech, and the press, and freedom of assembly. For the second one, which is consists of social and economic inequality, are to satisfy two conditions, which is the second principle, the different principle, which meaning by there will be inequalities, but we morally obligated to improve the worst off unless it would make everyone worse off. So, second principle, which is the principle of equality of opportunity, which means job qualification must be related to the job, which must be equal access to the training for the most desirable jobs. So for the maximum solution, how to obtain maximum solution? By combining the two principles that I mentioned earlier, we will get benefit the least advantage in society. The worst outcome of a decision must be better than the worst outcome of alternative solution. Which means we are to adopt the alternative, the worst outcome of which is superior to the worst outcomes of the others. Thank you. We hope that you get the information and enjoy your day.